Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty significant and honestly quite concerning. We're looking at President Trump's recent directive ordering the Justice Department to investigate two former officials, people from his own administration, Miles Taylor and Christopher Krebs. We've got some news reports, some analysis on this, and our goal really is to unpack why this is happening now. What are they actually being accused of? And, what are the bigger implications here, especially around this whole idea of presidential influence over the DOJ? Okay, so let's unpack this. Maybe start with Miles Taylor.
Yeah, this is a situation that it really cuts to the heart of some big questions about how government is supposed to work. Miles Taylor, maybe not a household name for everyone listening, but he was a senior official at DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. He actually served under President Bush, and then again in the Trump administration. He ended up as chief of staff for Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. But that's not really why most people know his name, is it?
No, exactly. He's definitely best known for being anonymous, right? That 2018 New York Times op-ed where he just painted this picture of, well, chaos and resistance inside the Trump White House. And then he followed it up with the book, A Warning. Same anonymous label, basically saying the president was unfit. He didn't reveal who he was until October 2020. So years later, now this investigation pops up. What's the official line? What are they saying he did?
Well, according to the actual presidential memorandum that kicked this off, the stated reason for investigating Taylor is alleged leaking of classified information. It's tied directly to those anonymous writings, the op-ed, and the book. The memo also points out his security clearance has been revoked.
Yeah.
What's striking here and something to really think about is the timing and the fact it's a direct order from the president to the DOJ years after the fact.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder about the process.
It really does. And President Trump hasn't been shy about how he feels about Taylor. He's called him a traitor, suggested it was like spying. Also claimed he barely knew him, which, given Taylor was chief of staff at DHS, seems a bit hard to square. But Taylor's response to all this is pretty interesting, too.
Oh, absolutely. Taylor basically went on social media and said, look, this investigation proves the points I was making in my book and op-ed, validating his warnings about the direction things were heading.
Right.
His argument, essentially, is that dissent isn't illegal. Criticizing power, even strongly, shouldn't lead to this. He frames it as purely political punishment for speaking out. And that really raises a key point, doesn't it? What happens if people inside government feel they can't raise concerns, that they'll face reprisals?
Yeah, the potential chilling effect. You have to wonder who else might see things and just stay quiet now. Okay, let's shift then to Christopher Krebs. His situation is also tied up in a really, really contentious issue from that administration. The 2020 election.
Precisely. Christopher Krebs, he's the director of CISA. That's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, part of DHS. And CISA's job, it's crucial to remember, is protecting critical infrastructure. That includes election systems. So after the 2020 election, Krebs and CISA were very public, very clear, stating it was the most secure election in U.S. history, which, of course, ran completely counter to President Trump's claims, the constant claims of widespread fraud we all heard.
And we know how that ended for Krebs at the time?
We do. He was fired. 2 weeks after the election, President Trump fired him. And now this new presidential memorandum also orders the Justice Department to investigate him. So you see the sequence. Krebs contradicts the president on the election, gets fired, and now faces a DOJ investigation ordered by that same president.
Right. So what are the specific charges, or rather accusations against Krebs in this memo? What's the justification?
The memo accuses Krebs of, and this is the phrase used, weaponizing his position against free speech. The allegation is that CISA, under his leadership, basically censored conservative views, that it was done under the banner of fighting disinformation about the 2020 election, maybe COVID-19 too. And there are also these claims that CISA suppressed info about Hunter Biden's laptop and other things floating around then.
So the argument is Krebs trying to counter what CISA saw as bad info was actually stifling free speech. That's quite a claim.
It is. And it's really important to note here, many legal experts, civil liberties groups, they've raised serious doubts about this. They point out there's really a lack of evidence CISA was discriminating based on viewpoint. Plus, the Supreme Court actually looked at similar claims about government agencies combating misinformation and rejected the idea it violated the First Amendment. So CISA's actions were likely, legally sound. Which makes you ask, is this investigation about actual wrongdoing or something else?
And this is where we get to that really core point you mentioned earlier, the whole idea of a president just ordering the DOJ to investigate former officials, especially Officials who criticized him, or like Krebs, just stated facts that contradicted him. It feels like it hits right at the foundation of how things are supposed to work.
Exactly right. The independence of the Justice Department is just. It's fundamental. It's supposed to ensure the law isn't used for political payback or personal grievances. So the idea that the White House can just point the DOJ at people it sees as enemies, that raises huge concerns about abuse of power, about politicizing law enforcement. It really should set off alarm bells for anyone concerned about impartial justice.
It seems like such a departure from, well, from the norms, right? Usually, I mean, the White House sets broad priorities, sure, but specific investigations, they're supposed to come from evidence, from prosecutors acting independently, not from a direct presidential order, especially one that looks like it's tied to political anger.
That's the critical difference. The DOJ's integrity depends on people believing it operates without political interference. When a president orders probes into opponents, it just shatters that perception. Doesn't matter how the investigation turns out, the damage to perception is done. It creates this appearance, at least, that law enforcement is being used as a political weapon.
And then there's the whole security clearance issue. Revoked for Taylor and Krebs, and reportedly suspended for people working with Krebs now. What's the significance there?
Yeah, pulling security clearances adds another layer here. Clearances are about trustworthiness and needing access to classified info. Taking them away after someone's left government, especially if they've been critical, it can look punitive. And going after clearances for people at Krebs' current companies, set and loan, well, that could easily be seen as trying to punish by association, trying to exert pressure. It shows how far the ripples of this kind of action can spread.
Okay, so let's pull this together. We have a former president ordering investigations into two guys who publicly crossed him. Taylor, accused of leaks related to his anonymous criticism. Krebs, accused of weaponizing his agency against free speech, essentially for saying the election was secure.
Mm-hmm. And if we tie that back to that central concern about the DOJ, it really puts it in focus. Krebs's main crime, it seems, was stating a fact about election security that undercut the president's narrative, which forces the question, should a president be able to sic the DOJ on someone just for stating inconvenient facts? I think many people would argue that's exactly the kind of thing that erodes the rule of law and DOJ independence. It looks like weaponizing the department.
The viewpoints are just so starkly different. Trump calls Taylor a traitor, Krebs a disgrace. They need consequences, in his view. Taylor says, see, this proves my warnings. Dissent isn't illegal. And like we've said, experts and civil liberties groups are sounding alarms about politicization, about the risk to democratic norms.
Exactly. It boils down to, are these genuine investigations based on real concerns? Or are they politically motivated payback? Payback aimed at silencing critics, especially critics who defended the integrity of the 2020 election. Understanding that difference is, I think, really crucial for judging the health of our institutions right now.
Well, this has definitely given us a lot to chew on. It really does hammer home how important that separation between political power and the justice system is supposed to be.
It certainly does. And it shows why we constantly need to be vigilant about protecting the independence of the legal system and making sure people can actually speak truth without fearing political retaliation.
So for everyone listening, as you think about this deep dive today, the presidential orders, the specific accusations against Taylor and Krebs, how they've responded, these broader concerns about the Justice Department, what do you think the long-term consequences could be for the independence of these agencies? And maybe even more fundamentally, what does it do to the willingness of people inside government or after they leave to speak up, to speak truth to power when it might go against the grain? Think about that balance. Accountability, yes, but also the danger, the real danger of politically motivated investigations being used to shut down dissent and damage the integrity of our whole democratic process. It's a heavy one with big implications for all of us.